Hi, I'm Caden here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, it is finally time. After all the wait, we are finally here. It is week 1 of the 2024 NFL season. This episode will be going up on Thursday morning, so if you're watching it the day it comes out, you get to watch football tonight. If you're watching it the day after it comes out, you still get to watch football tonight because there's a Friday game in week 1. And of course, if you are watching it on Sunday, you get to watch football all damn day, baby. We are so excited for things to get rolling here, and just as excited as the games. Maybe not just as excited, but still pretty damn excited. We are happy for another year of Callan and I's head-to-head pick'em prediction game. Just a quick rundown before we jump straight into things on how the point scales work. It'll be the exact same way as it has been for the past 2, 3, 4, however many years we've been doing this now. Each game will be worth 1 point if it's just a regular game. And then any games that are marked as game of the week, which we will announce, of course, before talking about it, will be worth 2 points naturally. And then Callan and I each get 1 lock and 1 upset, which those 2 games / picks will each be worth 2 points as well. So that's a pretty simple rundown of the scaling system. If you somehow didn't understand it, you'll pick it up quickly as we go. So now, without further ado, because we cannot wait, let's jump straight into this with the first game of the 2024 season, which is Thursday Night Football, with the Baltimore Ravens heading to Kansas City to take on it the back-to-back defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. And we start by disagreeing here. I have the Ravens and Callan has the Chiefs.
Yeah, I like the Chiefs here because, like I talked about in our previous episodes, I don't know if the Ravens are going to have that strong of a season. And I think the Chiefs are going to come out hot. You know, they are missing a couple of running backs, so I expect them to pass the ball a lot. I look for Travis Kelce to get involved early and really make a big impact on this game like he usually does. But I would expect him to make an early impact early on. And I'd like to see what there is from Xavier Worthy because the Chiefs did actually recently re-sign Juju Smith-Schuster and brought him back. But Hollywood Brown, their offseason addition, is going to miss this game with a shoulder injury. So they're down to Xavier Worthy and Juju. And I think they still have Mecole Hardman.
I'm not sure on that.
I can't remember, but
Rashee Rice hasn't.
Oh, and they have Rashee Rice. Yeah, I keep
eventually he'll get a punishment.
Expecting that he's just going to get hit with a suspension brick, but it has not happened yet. So they still have Rashee Rice, and one guy I forget about a lot is Sky Moore.
Yeah,
they still have Sky Moore, the Super Bowl 51 standout who scored a touchdown. And they did release Kadarius Toney, so they are down some wide receiver numbers. But they're down more running backs with just Isaiah Pacheco and Samaje Perine as their 2 active running backs. So I don't expect the Ravens to put up much points in this one. I think the Chiefs' defense is going to figure them out early because the Ravens are going to want to force the ball to Derrick Henry and kind of show him off early on. So I think they're going to focus on that and stop him early. And I expect the Chiefs to kind of walk away with this one maybe early on.
Interesting. I do kind of agree that the Ravens probably have a slower start and don't really go out there and light up the scoreboard. But I have the Ravens in this one because the Chiefs always start slow. They could easily prove me wrong this year, but it seems like every year, the first 3-4 weeks of the season, the Chiefs just look sloppy because they have so many changes or injury bugs like they do this year, just like they have the past couple of years. Because I know and remember every year for the past 2 or 3 years, it's always been like, oh, are the Chiefs finally done? Or like a slow start, a 1-3 start, whatever. It's like, oh, is the Chiefs dynasty finally over? It's all the headlines. It's what everybody's talking about. And then it never actually is, but they just kind of have that history of having a slow start. And I think, like Callan mentioned, he made some really good points there with all these injuries and all of these off-season changes that they have right now. They're going to take a few weeks to kind of get used to that and get the ball rolling. So I think that for how marquee of a matchup this is in the big season opener, I think it's actually going to be an overall pretty sloppy game. I don't see either of these teams performing crazy well and having a big shootout. But nonetheless, I think that the Ravens just barely eke one out in what is a close, entertaining game, even though it's a little sloppy from both ends.
The lower scoring it is, the better of a chance the Ravens have.
100%.
So if it's a defensive battle, I would expect the Ravens to walk away with this one. But I think that the Chiefs are going to put points up, and I think they'll put up too many points for the Ravens to overcome.
Yeah, I completely agree with that first statement about it being
a defensive battle. Yeah.
And then moving on to the first Friday game in a while that I can think of. I don't know if they had any Friday games last year. We have the Green Bay Packers not heading to Philadelphia, but instead heading to Brazil to take on the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL's first Brazil game. And we split again here. Callan has his hometown Packers, of course, but I have the Eagles in this one. I think that this one is kind of the marquee matchup. I think this is going to be the really good, close, entertaining game that's a little less sloppy and a little more ready to go teams, because these teams are pretty similar from last year. Neither of these teams lost a ton of people. Neither of these teams gained a ton of people. I mean, the Packers, of course, their big loss/gain was changing out Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs. But the Eagles lose Jason Kelce to retirement. But outside of that, maybe this most recent trade where they just got Jahan Dotson, they had a pretty quiet offseason. They didn't do a ton of things that I can think of off the top of my head. So I think that this one is a really close game, and it was kind of a coin flip in my head because I could see this going either way. But because the Packers, I should say, I don't think the Packers will be that high-octane, high-powered offense that they were last year. I think they'll get a little bit figured out, for lack of a better term. I think that the Eagles defense plays pretty well and is able to stop them. But one big X factor that could mess with that is Darius Slay, their starting corner, will not be playing. That could easily be fixed by the fact that they just picked up 2 first-round caliber corners in Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in this last year's draft. But for a week one, for a first game of the season in Brazil, so lots of weird kind of unusual factors going around, I don't see any rookies performing crazy well in that scenario. So losing Slay could be a pretty big hit for them.
Yeah, I expect the Packers to do really well in this one. The offense has done a lot of working together in this preseason and playing in games. Not so much the last one, but in each game, what I liked is that all the starters dressed. None of them came out in street clothes. They all came out and did the pregame routine, did the pregame stretches, worked out like as if they were starting the game, and then they would let the backups take over. So I do like that they just were more involved this preseason than in seasons past, like with Rodgers. So I think that'll really help them. The Eagles, like you said, they're losing not only Darius Slay, but James Bradbury as well. So they could be a really high-powered, high offensive number for the Green Bay Packers, who could be playing against 2 rookie corners in Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So that could be big for the Green Bay Packer wide receivers who look to take advantage of those rookie corners early on. And one big X factor that I look for is the Packers defense. They're switching to a 4-3, kind of a multiple scheme under new defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley, and I expect them to do very well. And it's to focus more on stopping the run. And now the Eagles just recently signed Saquon Barkley, so I believe that if we're able to hold him under, I want to say, 175 yards, we're able to hold him under $175. I like the Green Bay Packers to run away with this one.
Yeah, you want to test your new run defense. Going against that Eagles offensive line, Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. you're going to find out real quick about how good that run
Mhm.
defense is. So
Mhm.
that'll be very interesting to see. Good.
I wanted to say
factor there.
200, but I think if we hold them under $175,
I was going to say $175 is a lot of rushing yards
that's
for
still
one
a
player.
lot.
That's
But
an insane game.
he's one of
for
those
one player.
players that I've seen firsthand take over games.
He could do it.
He can do it.
100%. He
So
can do it.
don't underestimate him. He can take over, whether it's in Philly, Green Bay, or Brazil.
Philly, Green Bay, or Brazil. Moving on from one NFC North team to the other, we have the Minnesota Vikings heading to New York to take on the New York Giants. Heading to New Jersey, I guess, technically, to take on the New York Giants. And for the first time this year, we agree. We both have the Minnesota Vikings in this one. Man, I am nervous. I'll be honest. I mean, I really like the additions we made. And I truly do, not just delusional Vikings fan, I truly do trust Sam Darnold. I think that this is, maybe aside from, like, if you factor in the starters in the situation last year in San Francisco, maybe you could say it was a better situation, but he didn't start last year in San Francisco, so you can't really factor that in. With Sam Darnold as a starter, I think this is far and away the best situation he's ever been in. So I don't know how you can't at least give him like a shot. I hear people already writing him off, already counting him out because he's Sam Darnold. He was the 3rd overall pick that busted when he went to the New York Jets. And that's just so unfair.
He sees ghosts.
You've seen a lot of guys come back and survive bad first years, second years, third years, however many years. I mean, Baker, Geno, they're all in some of the best situations of their careers right now.
Mhm.
And they're all 6-7 years into their career, just like Sam Darnold is. So I think that Sam Darnold's going to play much, much better than anybody expects. I think that this defense is definitely going to have some kinks to work out, but I think they'll do okay. More than anything, I think the Vikings still go on the road and pick up a win here because I just think the Giants are going to be a bad team this year.
Mhm.
Daniel Jones has the talent to be a really good quarterback, and he has been a winning quarterback in the NFL. I mean, just not last year, but 2 years ago, they beat the Vikings in the wild card to the playoffs as the 7th seed. It was pretty cool not cool for a Vikings fan, but if for the rest of the NFL and for Giants fans, it was pretty cool to see. So, but where I was going with that, I should say, is he just doesn't show it as much as he should. And if you watch him in the preseason, when he was facing maybe half starting defenses, he was still just getting stomped. He looked lost. He looked tough, or rough, I should say, not tough. But yeah, so more than anything, I don't even think the Vikings win this game. I think the Giants lose this game.
Yeah, I picked the Vikings because not so much I think the Vikings are going to win as I think the Giants are just kind of not as deep of a team as the Vikings are when you compare talent-wise. You definitely got the receiver edge for the Vikings with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, where the Giants probably is their strength because of Malik Neighbors, but he's still such an unknown. Even though he has big prospects, he's still such an unknown. It's hard to really grade him. And then you look at the running backs, Aaron Jones versus Devin Singletary. Both guys switching teams from, kind of a good situation to an unknown situation. And it'll be interesting to see which running back really performs well for their new team, whether it's Singletary or Aaron Jones. Both have been fragile in the past, so we'll see if either one can really play a whole season. But at least to start the year, they'll get their shot to prove they can stay healthy. And as far as the Vikings go, I just think that defense will figure out Daniel Jones. They'll give him trouble. Dallas Turner and Jonathan Grenard are going to cause some edge rushing trouble. And even though the Vikings don't have a very deep cornerback room, it's kind of a hodgepodge of veterans and cast-offs.
It's actually mostly veterans. I mean, just recently we signed Stephon Gilmore, so now our top. I don't think a Caleb B. Evans has quite broke the top 3 yet. I think he's sitting more in that corner 4 slot position. So technically, our top 3 corners are Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, and Fabian Monroe. So if that was our cornerback room in like 2019, that'd be pretty damn lit.
That's an all-star cornerback room.
Now it's like We'll see how it goes.
But yeah, so they're kind of put together just from cast off parts. But I think they'll do well enough to cover to at least shut down Malik Neighbors. Even though I do see him making some big plays, I think they'll shut him down enough to keep the Giants at bay, and the Vikings walk away with this one pretty easily. As I said in our previous episodes, the Vikings will win some games this year because they're going to beat up on lesser talented teams. They get one right off the bat. So this is one to take advantage of and get a victory early on.
Yeah, to honor the first week of college football being this past weekend, it's a warm-up game. Mm-hmm. It's an FBS versus an FCS type game. What I really want to see from this game, more than anything, even more than a win, is I want to see our offensive line play really well. Our offensive line has the pieces to be one of the better ones in the league, and it just hasn't been the past few years. So if we go against a defensive line with Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, and newly acquired Brian Burns, and we can hold up and keep Aaron Jones upright and keep Sam Darnold upright, that's going to make me happier than anything to see, because that's a really good defensive line.
Forgot about that defensive line.
Big time, yeah. So now moving on to what is our game of the week with the Arizona Cardinals heading to Buffalo to take on the Buffalo Bills. And we go back to disagreeing here. Callan has the Bills, and I have the Cardinals as my upset. I have been on the Cardinal hype train all season. You heard me talk about it a ton when we were doing our division predictions. But I am sticking with it here. I am sticking to my guns. I think that the Cardinals come out here and start the season really strong. I think that Marvin Harrison looks like an NFL-ready receiver from the first snap. I mean, he is one of the better wide receiver prospects in a while. And that's saying a lot because the past few draft classes have been insane wide receiver draft classes. So to say he's one of the upper echelon when it comes to prospects is crazy to think about. But overall, I think this team just has such a good chance to be special. Everyone's looking down on them. No one really thinks they're doing that well. I'm sure everybody's looking at the mighty Bills and saying, just like I said with the Vikings and Giants, it's an FBS versus an FCS type warm-up game. So why not go out there as the Cardinals and just give it your all and start kind of proving people wrong from week one? More than I even think it's going to happen, I think I want it to happen. But even saying that, I truly do think there is a chance. I mean, this defense, they're a little questionable. That's kind of the big question mark of the Arizona Cardinals, but they're also going against a Buffalo Bills offense that's been in its biggest question mark in probably the last 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, with that wide receiver situation, having Keon Coleman be your number one, is James Cook going to be able to continue what he was able to do last year? Lots of question marks on that Bills offense as well. So I see this being maybe somewhat of a shootout, but that Cardinals offense is more ready to go. Flip side of the coin, more ready to go than it has been in probably the past 3, 4, 5 years. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do with Jonathan Gannon at the helm when they kind of let Kyler Murray just run around and be Kyler Murray like he was back at Oklahoma. I want to see it so bad. I really do.
Yeah, it definitely has the prospects to be an upset. I think the Bills will walk away with this one because, well, mostly because the Bills are at home, even though Arizona is lucky that they get a trip to Orchard Park early on in the year instead of late in the season when it's cold and wintry. They'll have pretty mild weather to go in to Buffalo. So, this I think will be a lot closer than people think because of it looking like on paper such a stronger team versus a weaker team. But the weakness of the Cardinals is that defense. And like you said, the Buffalo Bills are coming in with a very questionable wide receiver room. Well, they're kind of learning the ropes and gaining chemistry. They're going to have to do that against a cornerback room of the Cardinals that's had now a couple of years under Jonathan Gannon to really form and solidify their status in the NFL. So I think it'll be a really tough matchup. I think the Bills do win, but I think it's a lot closer than people think. And Josh Allen has to put that cape on early and play some hero ball early on and look for the Buffalo to win this one by maybe a touchdown or 10 points.
It ain't a Bills season if it's not hero ball from week one. I mean, what are you doing without it? Moving on here, one that we won't stick too much on. I'll let Callan talk about it first, but there's just a couple of small things I wanted to touch on with it because it's a fun, interesting matchup. We have the Denver Broncos heading to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. I have the Seahawks, and Callan actually has the Broncos as his upset.
I like the Broncos as my upset here, more again because I think the Seahawks are going to be kind of down this year. I liked what I saw from the Denver Broncos secondary, even though it was week 2 of the preseason. But I did watch that Packers-Broncos game, and boy, did they figure out how to shut down that Packers passing offense. Now, granted, they were playing their starters, Denver was, and Green Bay was playing their backups. But in a game that ended up 27-0, that sure looks ugly no matter what week it is. When you get shut out, whether that's preseason or regular season, that's just not good coaching. And that's bad on Matt LaFleur, who really needs to have his backups more prepared. But hopefully we don't have to turn to them. But as far as Denver goes, I really liked what I saw in that game. Their secondary played very well. Their run defense played very well. And Bo Nix was able to solidify his spot as a starter in the Denver Broncos quarterback room. And he won that job in that game where he had a couple of passing touchdowns and really looked comfortable in that offense. So I think because of his comfortableness and the fact that that secondary is going to shut down DK Metcalf and the Seahawks wide receivers, I look for the Denver Broncos to walk away with an early upset early on in the NFL year.
Yeah, I love this matchup just because there's a couple of those like fun little niche storylines that make it fun. But first and foremost, of course, it's the two teams, the two former Russell Wilson teams, which is kind of funny. You got the Broncos versus the Seahawks.
The Russell Wilson Bowl.
But what I really like about this one is the offensive matchup here. The two offenses comparing them because they're extremely similar offenses where they have not elite, but pretty damn good offensive line. They each have a pretty damn solid top 3 wide receiver, and they each have a pretty damn good two-headed monster with the running backs in their backfield. But then they each also have similar quarterback situations, but on two sides of a coin, where Geno Smith just finally got the big contract and just got paid for the first time in his career and is going to have to go out there and show that he was worth the money, the big contract that they gave him. And then you got Bo Nix, who's in a prove-it situation as well, but because he's a rookie and because every rookie has to prove it, no matter where you're picked or how much money you're making. So I just found that really interesting how similar these offenses, especially considering if you look at it, they're probably pretty similar matched on defense as well. So overall, it's just a really even across-the-board matchup for these two teams. I do have the Seahawks in this one, mostly just because they got the 12th man, they got the home field advantage. But I could easily see a Broncos win here because Bo Nix might be a rookie going into that home field advantage, into the 12th man. But he's played a lot of football in his life. We're talking about a guy who was a 5-year starter in the NCAA, playing for teams like Auburn and Oregon. So he's played in the big games. He's went to the loud, crazy stadiums and still went in there and won. So this is going to be a fun matchup to watch. I'm really excited for this one. So now moving on to one of our two final games and Sunday Night Football with the Los Angeles Rams heading to Detroit to take on the Lions. And we split again here. I have the Rams and Callan has the Lions.
Yeah, reluctantly, I had to pick the Lions here to get a win early on in this NFL season. I do expect the Lions to do very well this year. Unfortunately, it pains me to say it, but damn, are they a complete team. And because of that, I just think that they're going to be able to win this game pretty easily against the Rams. The Rams are coming in kind of already wounded with Puka Nacua questionable to play, and they're going to try out Kyren Williams as their punt returner as also their starting running back, which some of that double duty can kind of be detrimental to a player, who really broke out last year. It can be too much on one plate. So we'll see how he handles all of those duties. And as far as the Lions go, Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown have just formed quite the connection. And I think that that connection is going to beat out the connection of Stafford and Kupp and Stafford and Nacua, if Nacua even plays. But even if he doesn't play, they still got that wide receiver in Cooper Kupp that can take over games and win them. But if he's not able to, I think the Lions do win this one with the running game. And with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery being the two-headed monster right there in Detroit, I think the running game takes over early on and is able to put this game away when it comes down to it, because that is a really strong running game. And their defense and defensive line and offensive line are going to win in the trenches against these Rams, who are without Aaron Donald for the first time in over a decade. So they're going to get a culture shock, realizing that they're not the number one team in the trenches anymore. And I expect the Lions to walk away with this one in a very physical battle.
That is an exact point I was about to make. This is a bad game for the Rams to not have Aaron Donald for the first time in a long time, because that is a tough team up front with some really good running backs. I have the Los Angeles Rams pretty much for one reason and one reason only here, and it is just Matthew Stafford. That much of a competitor. You give him against his former team, that team that took all those years from him. And if I'm not mistaken, when they faced last year, the Lions already defeated him once. I'm pretty sure. I'm totally blanking. I can't remember for sure.
I can't remember, but I think it was in LA.
I'm pretty damn positive. I think it was because it was his return to Detroit.
Oh.
But I'm pretty sure that the Lions beat him last year. So now he already has that bad taste in his mouth where he's like, I got my chance last year.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. We already lost. So he is just such a competitor. Now here you are in prime time. I don't think it was prime time last year. So now here you are on the first Sunday Night Football of the season. Get the chance to get the revenge on the Lions again. I think that he is a man possessed in this game. And there is so many factors against them. But sometimes, just like we talk about with Josh Allen, one man is all it takes to play some hero ball. And Matthew Stafford isn't the same type of hero ball. He's not going to do the crazy high-flying stuff like Josh Allen does. But he can still play hero ball in his own way. And he's done it many times for the Detroit Lions, being the only person on the field playing hero ball. So I think now he finally gets his chance to do it against the Detroit Lions. And he converts on that chance and picks up a close win, but nonetheless a win on the road to start the season. So now moving on to our final game for our Week 1 NFL predictions, with the New York Jets heading to San Francisco to take on the 49ers on Monday Night Football, first one of the season, and we both have the 49ers in this one. Aaron Rodgers is just such a question mark. I just don't, there's not really much else to say, because yeah, I could sit here and rattle off all the good things about the 49ers. They just restructured Trent Williams to make him happy. They just extended Brandon Ayuk to make him happy. Everyone on their team's happy right now. Everyone on that team is Super Bowl hungry. There's not really much negatives I can go over and say about the San Francisco 49ers right now, just because there's so many positives. And the same just can't be said for the Jets. I think there is a lot of positive for the Jets right now, but I think there's a lot of negatives you can point out with the Jets. I think there's that one huge question mark, that one huge 42-year-old question mark sitting there in the backfield. What is Aaron Rodgers going to do? Can he survive a whole season after coming off of a torn ACL? 7 plays, I believe it was, into last season. It's the definition of a question mark. It's the ultimate question mark out of this entire list.
He is.
So when you have a team like the San Francisco 49ers at home with absolutely 0 question marks, going against a team going all the way across the country from East Coast to West Coast with countless question marks, including one elephant in the room size question mark, there's just no way you can't pick the Niners.
Right, and I like that we both picked the Niners, and the first thing we say is Aaron Rodgers.
Because what else? What else is there? Yeah.
Because, right, this game is, no matter who you pick, this game is focused around that one man. And boy, is he loving it, because it feeds his ego that it's just centered around him. And it took me a long time to realize about how egotistical he was. About a couple of years ago, after he left Green Bay, I realized how
you took the blinders off.
Yes, exactly. So, as the Jets will go as far as he takes them, because he did that in Green Bay. And whether that's to one game with a torn Achilles or the Super Bowl, we'll have to see. But I do like the Niners in this one because San Francisco's at home. It's a long trip for the Jets and that old man to go from Jersey to San Francisco. And really, he's always had a weakness to the Niners, Aaron Rodgers has. He's struggled against the Niners constantly and always in the playoffs. So we'll have to see if he can exercise any demons and beat these Niners. But as far as the Niners defense goes, I think they're going to be able to shut down Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. I don't really know of many other options on the Jets right now. I'm sure some will come up, but I can't think of any off the top of my head besides Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. So I think that they'll get shut down because they're the two center points. They'll leave it up to Aaron Rodgers to win the game for him and see if he really does still have it. And I don't think that he still has it enough to single-handedly win games anymore. So I looked for Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey to take advantage of a weaker Jets defense and put up points against the Jets. And I look for the Niners to walk away with this one.
We didn't talk about it because it was a kind of a boring game, but Cal and I both picked the Bengals as our lock earlier in this one. And I almost picked the Niners as my lock. And I know I just said all that stuff about the Niners, but one thing I will say that's in the Jets' favor in this game is I've watched Aaron Rodgers way too many goddamn years to ever count that son of a bitch out. So I just couldn't justify making the Niners my lock and then having them get upset week one by torturous Aaron Rodgers, who's been taking years off my life ever since I started watching football. So
we'll have to see if he does it to me.
It's the only reason that I couldn't pick the Niners as my lock here. But thank you all so much for watching this episode. We are here. It is time for week one of the 2024 NFL season. Make sure you stay tuned in until next week, in which we will go back to our more normal or every week schedule of Wednesday morning. We will have a reaction or recap to the previous week's games. And then Thursday morning, we will have a prediction for the coming up week's games, just as this episode will be coming out Thursday morning. So like I said, really appreciate you all watching. Really appreciate all the support throughout this entire off season. Recently had a video get over 200 views, which was just awesome to see.
Record breaker.
Big time record breaker. Pretty much more views than most of our videos combined. So love to see stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for that. Hopefully the support will keep rolling and we can just keep the momentum rolling now that we are in the true season and football is back, baby. So make sure you stay tuned in until next week. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.